Today, what I'm going to do is cover just the basics of PhotoView 360, what you need to know to make a really nice rendering very quickly. There are a lot of nitty-gritty details with PhotoView 360 for the really advanced renderers that like to get into that stuff, but you can get 95% of that quality just very quickly without having to get into the detailed settings. So let's take a look. The steps that I'm going to be highlighting today are the ability to, I've basically broken it up into lights, camera, action. With one little previous step, I had to add a makeup phase. Couldn't think of anything else to call it. So we're going to cover these 4 steps to creating a really nice rendering. And again, focus on the quick tools to get really good results. This presentation is going to be available online, and it does have an advanced section. As you'll see right here, as I zoom into the things under the makeup category, we've got materials and appearance, but then an entire advanced section that you could browse through that includes creating a custom appearance, surface maps, customizing the surface finish, doing a displacement map so that the material actually renders as a bumpy surface even though it was modeled as a smooth surface, decals and things like that. But again, today, let's just focus on the basics. SolidWorks already comes with an entire material database. So we can take advantage of this because, as you should know, when you assign a material, an appearance also gets applied as that material is assigned. Now, SolidWorks chose out of the appearance library what materials should have what appearances. But obviously those don't always match up with what exactly you might have in your company. For instance, picking like an aluminum, you might always anodize that aluminum. So if you wanted to, you could actually just create a custom material that has the appearance of an anodized aluminum material, so you don't even have to edit the appearance every single time you apply the aluminum material. To do so, I've laid it out step by step right here, but basically what we can do is we can create our own custom materials directory on the Edit Materials dialog box. Then we can copy whatever we want, in this case maybe like a pine wood, just by right-clicking. So anytime you see RMB, that's right mouse button. So that's a right mouse button click inside of these little steps. You can right-click any one of these existing materials, copy it, and then right-click on a directory to paste it into that. And you can organize these and name them whatever you'd like. After that, you're completely free to change the physical properties, so if the density is not just right, but more importantly for PhotoView, we can change the appearance as well as the hue as well. Maybe if I wanted to make like a treated pine that initially had a greenish hue to it. So that's very basic. I think everyone knows how to apply materials. That's how we could get kick-started with applying appearances, because that's really the first step, is applying the appearances and the colors and so forth to make sure our model renders appropriately. Now, I've learned a really nice trick that's really not documented anywhere in SolidWorks' help files or anything like that, and I want to share that with you. I think this is one of the most efficient ways to apply appearances. And then the other thing I want to communicate is the very important to understand hierarchy of appearances, how they're applied, and that's specifically this little bar right here. We can apply appearances to faces, features, bodies, or parts, and in an assembly, even a component itself. So let's take a look at this. Really quick, I have this simple model. It's 3 features, 1, 2, 3, and the second two, the 2 features, the second 2 extrusions are actually part of the same body. So knowing this, as I go browse through my appearance library, which you'll find over here in your task pane on the right-hand side of the interface, I usually like to hit this little thumbtack to pin it open so I could browse back and forth very quickly. If I go to a plastic folder, we'll just say medium gloss for the heck of it, everything inside this folder is listed below, and what I can do is I can drag and drop these appearances, these different colors, onto my model. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start by dragging and dropping this one right here. Now as soon as I do, this pop-up comes up. That is incredibly important to understand. I can apply this red appearance to the entire part file, to just that solid body. There are two solid bodies in this model since they're disconnected, to the feature, which happens to look like the same as a solid body in this particular case, or just that face. So I'm going to apply a coat of paint, you can think of it like that, to like the base coat of paint to the entire part file. So think of these as layers of paint. I'm going to drag and drop the blue appearance up here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply it to this body. So you can see if I applied it to just that feature or just that face, but what I'm going to do is apply it to the entire body, one level up. The green, I'll go ahead and drag it up here and apply it to just that feature. So the body would overwrite the blue. The green being applied to just that feature is overriding the blue, but only on the feature itself. And then finally, one more color. I'll drag up here on the top and just apply that to the face. So what that means is, understanding that hierarchy, is the face, if I click on this and hit this little beach ball icon, which is a universal icon for anything to do with appearances in SolidWorks, you could see there's actually 4 appearances applied to this specific face, but they're all layered and one overrides the other. The face is always going to apply or override the appearance applied to the feature. The feature is always going to override the appearance applied to the body, and the body is always going to override the entire part file. So if I were to remove the yellow feature, or the yellow appearance I should say, what color is it going to turn? It's going to turn green, the next layer of paint below that. And if I were to click on this and remove the green appearance, it's going to turn blue, and so on. So if I remove the blue appearance, it's going to turn red. So we can add appearances, remove appearances as we want. And one really nice trick, this is the one that wasn't documented anywhere, is what about when we want to apply appearances to multiple faces? What I see too many people doing is this: dragging and dropping, selecting the face. Dragging and dropping, selecting the face option. Dragging and dropping again, selecting the face option. If you need to apply this appearance to 20 different faces, that could get really repetitive. The other thing that we'll see going on here is, if I go ahead and look at the what they call the Display Manager tab, it's all the way across from the Feature Manager tab on the left-hand side of the interface. What we could do is we could review all the different appearances inside this model. There's a red appearance and a yellow, and the red has been applied to the entire part file. The yellow has been applied to those 3 faces. So what's really nice is if I ever wanted to edit the color, because we don't have every color in the entire color spectrum here. We just have pretty much the primary colors plus green, and then some shades of gray and beige. What if we wanted purple or something like that? What I could do is I could drag any color onto my model, click on that appearance right here. I could right click and hit Edit Appearance. What this is going to do is edit the appearance as it's applied to all 3 of those faces at once. So if I wanted to select like a magenta color, I could go ahead and do so. If that magenta color wasn't exactly what I wanted, I could go ahead and tweak it a little bit, maybe more to a purplish tone with these red, green, and blue values, these RGB values below. And if I hit OK, it will remember that. Still calls it yellow, but we can rename that as well if we really preferred to. The other thing too that I want to point out is with appearances, once I'm editing it, you can go ahead and if you click this button right here, Advanced, what this will allow you to do is it'll enable a little more functionality. This functionality will allow you to go ahead and save this appearance externally to a file so that you don't need to go ahead and recreate this appearance over and over again. By the way, I just want to take a second to say if you want to ask any questions, please do. And I may or may not be able to get to them during the presentation, but I'll certainly be able to address questions at the end. Just so you know, I see a few coming in. So if I wanted to save this appearance for the future, I could just go ahead and hit save. And we could save this to any directory that we want. You can see the file type is a P2M. This is a PhotoView appearance file extension. But we don't want to just save this anywhere. We could if we wanted to, but to be a little bit more proactive and organized, if I go up to my options menu and bring up my system options, a very important thing to always pay attention to is your file locations. Where are you storing your data? If you're just using a standard installation of SolidWorks, your document templates, which may be customized, like I have mine customized to have our company logo on it and so on, might be stored in your program files directory. Now that's a real dangerous thing because if you ever uninstalled SolidWorks or updated it, there's no guarantee that those customized files won't be lost. So what I always like to do is put my customized templates inside another directory. If you have multiple users, you're definitely going to want to put this on the network so everyone will be able to reference these files. What's nice is SolidWorks gives us directories that we could tell SolidWorks to point to find custom appearances, custom decals, and custom scenes. If I take a look at my custom appearances, I actually have a custom appearances folder in my SolidWorks file directory. Cool thing is too, it's available right here just like all the other custom appearances. So if I wanted to save this for the future, I'd edit this appearance, save the appearance, go to my SolidWorks files directory and find my custom appearances directory, and I would just call this maybe purple. Medium gloss plastic. So I'll go ahead and save it right there. Now if I were ever to remove this appearance, it's gone, but there's my new purple appearance right here inside of my main custom appearances folder. I can drag and drop this onto this face. And now, again, I mentioned this earlier, the little trick that I said wasn't documented anywhere else. This is finally the trick that I'm talking about. For applying appearances to multiple faces at once, before you select the face option, what you do is you hold down the Alt key and then click the face option on this little pop-up dialog. When I do that, it automatically brings up the properties of that appearance. So it's also helpful when you know you're going to bring in an inaccurate color, but it's the right type of appearance. It's a glossy plastic or a dull plastic or a satin finish, but it's just not the exact right color. Bring it in, Alt select that option. The other thing it does, because I selected a face, is it has this big selection window open with the face option or filter selected. So now to apply appearances to multiple faces at once, I could just go ahead and continue to click them and then hit OK. That's a lot easier than drag and drop, drag and drop, drag and drop. And it works all the same. So again, the trick, if I come back over to my presentation file, is to drag and drop on the pop-up, hold down Alt while you select one of these options, and then go ahead and select similar geometry. And remember the hierarchy as you move forward. Faces override features, which override bodies, which override the part appearance. All right, here's some of the advanced stuff. Again, this will be available online if you want to click through it, but with our time constraints, we won't have time to get into this today. Maybe we could come back if some questions are asked. All right, so that was the makeup. Now on to lights, camera, action. First, we're going to take a look at lights. And before we do that, I want to bring another model up to speed really quick. We're going to be working with this little helmet model that I created. A lot of surfacing tricks on here. If you want to take a look, if you want to learn a thing or two about surfacing, you could actually download this model at grabcad.com, and it's actually includes a bunch of tips as well. If you go to the Evaluate tab when you open the model after downloading it, just so you know that this exists, all the way at the end there's a Part Reviewer button. If you click this button, what it will allow you to do, if you turn on Sketches and Comments, it will allow you to roll back all the way to the beginning of the feature tree. And as I click the blue button, it's going to step through a bunch of individual features and show you those bodies and the features. It'll highlight them with my comments explaining exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing and how I'm doing what I'm doing. So it's kind of a real nice interactive learning tool that SolidWorks built into the software. You see it's scrolling down through the feature tree while you could read my notes on each of the individual features that I created. So it's kind of a little surfacing tutorial. But I'm going to skip to the end because all we care about today is going ahead and applying the appearances. We'll wait just a second for that to rebuild, and I'll take a sip of water. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at applying appearances to this. I'm going to activate this little appearance tab. Again, it's the universal beach ball symbol right here. Appearances are really half the battle for creating a great rendering inside of SolidWorks. What I'll do here is I'm just going to roll back a little bit because I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I'm going to start applying appearances. And the order that you want to think of applying appearances is what applies to everything. And, so what is the largest quantity of components? What is the largest quantity of surface area? What is the largest quantity of faces? Whatever it might be, in any one of those categories, that might influence what appearance you're actually going to apply to the entire part file. Because there's got to be a base. And I mentioned that what we could do is we could go ahead and give this part a material, and that's going to influence the color. So I'm just going to give this a steel material. What you'll see is the entire body will turn into steel. But the reason I'm doing it here is because we've got a bunch of fasteners all over the place, and rather than dragging and dropping that onto each one of the fasteners, that'll be a quick way to apply it to multiple bodies at once. The rest I'll have to do manually. So let's take a look here. The types of plastics that we have inside of the appearance library range from high gloss, medium gloss, to low gloss, soft touch. So a lot of different textures, a lot of different looks and feels. What I'm going to do is pick a medium gloss. I told you already I'm from Cleveland, so I'm a miserable Cleveland Browns fan, so that's what we're going to be modeling today or applying appearances to. For whatever reason, they have a gray face mask. I never understood why. I always thought it should be white, but it's gray. So we're going to apply a medium gloss gray appearance, and you can see I could apply it to the entire part, the body, just that feature, or just that face. I'm going to apply it to the entire body, that entire face mask body inside of this part file. Another type of appearance that we might want to add is a clear plastic. Now you can see we have all different types of clear plastics, and what you're really going to want to do to make sure you've picked the right one and to check your work at all times is open up what's called the PhotoView preview window. I'm going to do that in just a second after I apply this translucent plastic. So I need to apply this to multiple solid bodies within this part file. Anytime I'm doing that, I'm going to hold down the Alt key and select my option from that pop-up menu. Again, because the filter pops up for solid bodies. The selection window is just waiting. I don't even have to hold down the control key. I could just start to click on all the separate bodies. Whenever I'm done, I can hit OK, and there we go. Now, to check my work very quickly, I'm going to zoom in here and hit PhotoView, the drop-down, and select the preview window. Before I even talk about this PhotoView drop-down, you might be wondering where it came from. To turn PhotoView on, if you have purchased it and if you own it, you need to hit the little drop-down menu, the arrow, right next to the options menu, and select add-ins. What's going to pop up is this little add-ins menu. This is a complete list of all the tools available inside of SolidWorks, the version of SolidWorks that you own. PhotoView 360 is right here. If I check it on the left-hand check mark box, what it's going to do is turn PhotoView on for this particular session. If I check it on the right-hand side, it's going to turn it on every single time I start up SolidWorks. If you have a network license and you're sharing just a few professional seats with a bunch of other basic seats, then you're only going to want to turn this functionality on when you're actually using it. Otherwise, you're locking out that professional license for everyone else because you have it on every single time you start up SolidWorks. That's why the two checkboxes exist. I don't share my SolidWorks with anyone because I'm stingy, so I leave it on all the time. If I hit this PhotoView drop-down menu, or we could even hit the Render Tools tab on the Command Manager, you're going to see once we turn on the PhotoView add-in, we're going to have a lot more rendering tools. The preview window is one of the best. And if you have a dual monitor setup, you're definitely going to want to dock this on the other side. One of the tips I'll give you, though, is when you're rendering, I don't know how this translucent plastic is actually going to look. Is it going to be too translucent, too clear? I want it to be a little bit cloudy so I could actually see that it's there. And we have so many options to choose from. It's really just when you're getting started off, trial and error. And what you'll find is that you'll find your favorite types of materials for certain situations, and those will be your go-to. Again, you can tweak these around, tweak how transparent they actually are, all those properties pretty easily. But again, those are more of the advanced settings. What I'm showing here with the preview window is a quick preview of just a portion of my model and how it's going to look. I could see the tab looks pretty clean. I like the reflection on the bolt, so the standard material appearance that was applied for that steel that I picked looks pretty good. And that medium gloss plastic finish on the face mask, that coating, looks alright as well. Other thing I want to point out is applying an appearance to a solid body is not changing the physical properties at all. You can make, as I did right here, everything has the base material of metal right now. It's not the greatest practice. What I'd actually like to do is go through all those solid bodies and assign the appropriate material and then start overriding it with the appearances. But for the sake of time, I just left it as it was. But that proves a point that I can have this look like translucent plastic. It still contains all the physical properties of the metal material that's applied to it. So appearance has nothing to do with the material or physical properties. One tip with the preview window, I told you could dock it on another screen if you have a dual monitor setup, but keep it small when you're working. If you have it really large, what you'll see is that it starts off blurry, then it takes a while to render. Actually scrubbing your mouse across a specific area is going to make that area render faster than the rest. That's a little hidden tip as well. But I like to keep this small so SolidWorks has less to think about. So as I'm rotating my model to a new position and it's re-rendering this preview, it updates much more quickly than it would if that was taking up the entire screen. So I guess that's what a metal, all steel helmet would look like. Actually pretty cool. Pretty much cooler than the Browns helmet as well. Sorry, any other Cleveland fans. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and close this just so my computer's not wasting any time rendering this preview. even though, again, you could leave that open on a separate window, especially if you resize it to be small. And I'm going to keep on adding some more appearances just to finish up this phase of the rendering process. We'll find some low gloss white plastic. I'll drag it onto that body. Because I want to apply it to other bodies, I'll alt click that selection and click the other selections that I want to apply that to. And then for the helmet, what we'll do is I'm going to actually apply a painted appearance to this. Paints give a little bit different types of reflections, a little bit of depth and texture as well. So if I click through here, we actually have a whole host of car paints. Some pretty cool stuff because they have metallic finishes too, which really apply some or give off some nice reflections. One thing you want to do before you start picking appearances to have an idea of how it's going to render without actually having to wait for the preview window to open is take a close look at these thumbnail images of each of the appearances. They're going to give you a lot of clues. For instance, if I'm hovering over this metallic warm gray, what we don't see is clear reflections on that geometry. And to comparatively speaking, if I hover over this blue appearance, what you'll see is you'll see such clear reflections you can almost imagine the room that this ball is actually, or the sphere is actually setting within, because you see the reflections of the floor, you see some windows, a sliding door. So what this is telling you is some appearances are very reflective and have clear reflections. This one you can kind of get a hint of the room around you, but it's still kind of blurry. And this one is such a matte finish that there's actually no indication of what type of environment this is actually in. You actually just see the highlight of the bright spot in the top left-hand corner. These are all things on the default appearances, but these are all things that can be tweaked as well. If I wanted that metallic warm gray finish, I could drag and drop it on and then just change the reflectivity property of that appearance. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag and drop white. I don't see any orange options here. So I'm just going to drag and drop the white because I like the mix of the reflectivity and so on. I'm going to hold down Alt while I select the body option. The reason for this is because white is certainly not the right color for the browns. I need to edit the color. So the way we're going to do this is selecting these color boxes right here. A dialog is going to come up with my most commonly used swatches. By the way, you can create your own custom swatches as well, which is pretty cool, and load them, save them, load them. There's dull colors, shiny colors, and you can pick from a bunch of different swatches that you might create on your own. You could save those again to your custom appearance library or directory that you might have saved on the network for everyone else to share. But in this case, I'm just going to click right here and set the color to orange. What you'll also see is another color box right below it. It's called the secondary color. This has a lot to do with the hue of the reflections that are coming off of the material. But really, depending on the material, the secondary color can mean a lot of different things. And with some of the wood appearances that we have, the secondary could be what's the color of the darker grain that's in the wood. So it's really trial and error to figure out what it might be. This is just going to be a very solid orange color, so I'm just going to use the same color for both the primary and the secondary color. So that little tweak is why I hit Alt, so that it can, when I selected the body option, so that the properties automatically popped up and I could tweak them right away, and I'm on my way. So it's looking good so far. The next thing that we're going to want to do is take a look at the again, the lights. So a common misconception in PhotoView 360 is that you actually need to add lights to your model. If I come over to SolidWorks really quick, what we'll see on the Display Manager tab is that I have three options here. I can show my appearances that have been applied to this model. I could show the decals, none so far. And then I could show the scene, lights, and the camera options. If you expand this lights folder, you can see that there's already a ton of lights inside of here that have to do with the specific scene that we selected. But what you'll also see, if I right-click on this, you'll see that it's currently on in SolidWorks, which is why it's allowing me to turn it off in SolidWorks, and it's off in PhotoView 360, which is why it's giving me the option to turn it on. So this first icon being colored in is telling me that it's being applied to the SolidWorks preview window, these directional lights. Each one of these lights can have a different luminosity. They could have a different direction, a different size. There's spotlights, all different types of lights that behave differently. But I'm never, in PhotoView 360, never messing around with these. PhotoView 360 actually took over for another rendering product called PhotoWorks. I think it was in 2009. Before then, you did have to modify lights. You did have to do all this nitty-gritty detail to hopefully get a good-looking render. That's one of the huge differences between that legacy add-in software for rendering and the one we're currently using today. So, yes, the main point I want to make is don't even worry about lights. They're not even turned on by default for PhotoView, so they're not affecting the render. The only purpose of them is to make your SolidWorks Real View preview on the screen a little bit more realistic and looking pretty, semi-similar to what the rendered results are going to look like. So, how do we control the lights then? Well, the lights are controlled in PhotoView 360 almost entirely by the environment, or you could call this the scene. And I'm going to give you a few tips on how to find a scene and adjust a scene to your liking. So let's take a look at this. Right now, if I wanted to adjust a scene or pick a different one, I could minimize this appearances folder on the right-hand side. I could expand the scenes folder, and you can see we have a few top-level directories. We have basic scenes that I can choose from. Just a double click is going to go ahead and apply that particular scene to your SolidWorks model. I could double click on this one, I could double click on that one, but really we have no idea how this is affecting the model unless we are taking a look at our preview window. So that's what I'm going to do right here, is open up my preview window. So you can see right here, I have a little bit of a problem. The half of my helmet is cut off like it's digging down into the ground. So let me show you how to edit some settings on a scene. Number one, what I'm going to do is when the Display Manager tab is active, when the Scenes button is active, we have this scene icon right here at the top of this little tree. If I right click on it, what you could see is that I can edit the scene. What I'm going to do is I can go ahead and reposition my floor, or I could get rid of the floor altogether. If I want to get rid of the floor, what I could do is I could right click right here and turn off floor shadows. If there's no need for shadows, then there's no need for a floor, and now my helmet is just kind of floating in outer space, so there will be no depth or understanding of how close it is on a surface, or if it's even resting on a surface at all. If I wanted to reposition it instead, I could turn that floor shadow on, and what I could do is I could right click and edit that scene. Down here at the bottom gives me an option to align floor with a particular piece of geometry. So whether you create a custom plane or whether you select one of the standard planes, I'm just going to select this plane that I called floor, that I made tangent to some of the bottom pieces of the model. Now you can see we've got a nice little shadow resting just below the helmet, as we may want. So far everything's looking good. Again, use this preview window to check your work. Zoom into specific areas, make sure it's it looks the way you expect it to, and everything is looking good. So check your work frequently with that preview window. That's why I like to keep it open on another monitor. But what I'm going to do here is let's take a look at some of the other scenes that are available. There's a bunch. There's some studio scenes. And if I were to select one of these, so just double clicking, what you'll begin to see is now we're going to be seeing with studio scenes some highlights or reflections that are going to be appearing on my model. I'm going to increase the size of this just slightly and zoom in to the actual orange helmet, and you'll see the reflections of the surrounding geometry in the scene. What happens in SolidWorks, the reason I said those lights are no longer important is because SolidWorks is surrounding your model with a 3D image. So the environment truly is providing the light, because any bright spots on that 3D image that surrounds your model is going to act like a light source and cast light onto your actual model. Any dark spot will not cast light onto your model, and that will be an angle that will actually probably most likely receive a shadow from one of the other lights that are shining onto the model. So that's exactly what's going on. The other thing that happens is, so scenes are very important for providing light. They're also very important for controlling what reflections are going to be shown on your model. So I'm just going to click through some of these very quickly so you can see how it's reflecting off of that large orange helmet. I'll zoom in on it a little bit more. We have studio scenes, presentation scenes as well. This seems to be a favorite of a lot of people, the kitchen background. Again, because we can see the actual kitchen in the helmet itself. A lot of people will click through all these scenes and check out how their geometry looks. The different lighting is going to greatly affect the different highlights, the different ways the colors or the hues of the colors are going to be portrayed in the final render. Scenes affect a ton, so it's absolutely critical to pick the right one. Again, it comes with trial and error. You'll find your favorite ones for the different, different scenes look good for different types of materials, so it really depends on what types of materials are in your model to pick an appropriate scene. I'm going to edit this scene again. I'm going to turn the floor shadow off in this case. But I want to take a look again at the, if you can look at the preview window and check out those reflections inside of it. If I right click and hit Edit Scene, what this allows me to do on the Advanced tab is pick an environment rotation. So as I rotate this, what you'll see is not only the reflections changing inside of the model, but also the lighting changing inside the model as well. If I rotate the scene, it's going to be rotating the environment that surrounds it, which is going to be rotating the bright and the dark spots, which will rotate the light sources. So a very quick way to get the specific lighting that you want: first, find a scene that looks pretty good, and then come to the Advanced tab when you're editing the scene. And I say rotate this about 15-degree increments while paying attention to your preview window until the light is shining on the appropriate spots, and then the shadows are cast in the appropriate spots. Too often, scenes are skipped over really quickly just because the incorrect environment rotation was used for the geometry that you're working with. So give a scene a little bit more of a shot by applying it and then rotating it a bit. You can completely change, where the bright spots are, where the shadows are with that simple slider bar. The other thing too is if you find yourself always having to rotate a scene, then you can go ahead and save a scene just like you could save an appearance. So that's absolutely okay as well. On the Advanced tab, all the way down at the bottom is where you can go ahead and save your scene. Again, you want to pay attention to the directory that you're saving it in, so it might be able to be shared with everyone else. All right. One other thing that I want to point out as far as scene edits or properties or parameters go is the background. You have a few choices. You could set it to none, which is one of my favorites. You could set the background to a specific color and then pick that color right here. So if I wanted it a weird looking green, that would be fine. I could use an image, and if that was the case, I could browse to any image file to make my it my background, and you can see that it will go ahead and apply that to not only the background of the SolidWorks preview but also the render. A gradient between two colors, or use environment. If you choose use environment, it's not always as great as it might sound. Because you can make this appear that it's actually in, a room, and you can see that it looks like my helmet is just floating in this little bedroom that it's currently in, or I'm sorry, yeah, the kitchen that it's currently in. These background images, though, the environments, you can see are pretty low resolution, which is okay because maybe it was supposed to be, a little bit blurry of a background anyways. But the main thing is that they're not meant to be backgrounds because you're never going to orient it just perfectly for the image that you have. And it's always going to look, not match the perspective because, again, this is a spherical image. So I usually never use environment because the environment, again, the main purpose is to provide lighting and provide reflections on your actual helmet. If I wanted to, I could take an image of the Brown Stadium, use that as my environment, and allow the stadium to actually reflect off of the helmet. But still, for the background, I would probably take another image of the stadium and use that as just a 2D flat image background, maybe of the ground and maybe of the stadium in the background as well, and then I could strategically position my object on that. But again, I mentioned my favorite is setting it to none because sometimes where I'm going to place this rendered model has not yet been determined, and maybe I'm actually going to put it into a company PowerPoint or on a website or something like that. One of my favorite things to do with these final renders is to be able to save these out as a PNG file. A PNG file is similar to a JPEG file, but one of the huge differences is that a JPEG file has no transparency. If you have a white background in a JPEG file, or any JPEG file that you open is always going to have a rectangular shape. That's not the case with a PNG file. You can have transparency, and what I could do by setting the scene background to none, when I render this, if I render it in the PNG file format, it will actually make the entire background transparent, meaning that the shape of the image is actually going to be the shape of the helmet itself. I could drag it into a PowerPoint presentation. It's not going to have that ugly box that's going to cover everything else up. It's perfectly cropped to exactly the size and shape of the image. So that's a real nice trick that's built in right into PhotoView 360 as well. All right, moving on. Again, this will be available online. If you go and search on if you go to our blog, 3dvision.com/blog, and search PhotoView, what you'll find, actually I'll do it right here just to make sure we have the appropriate link. I'm going to go to our blog, and I'll search PhotoView. Yes, PhotoView 360 tips. You click on the very first result. This is a summary of some of the things that I'll be talking about, but it also will have a link to the presentation as soon as it pops up and loads, embedded right inside here. So you'll be able to click through it yourself. All right, so I mentioned the lights. Again, you can look at this if you're getting into some of the advanced controls. But really, the only time you're going to want to play around with lights is if you're doing something a little bit more specific, like modeling a lamp on a desk. Well, then you could use a spotlight to actually have light emit from that object, or a little point light, like a glowing ball from inside a room or a closet or an enclosed space. You can even make your geometry act as a light by applying an appearance. We actually have appearances that are lights, that emit light, LEDs, backlit LCD, an area light, and you could apply that to a bit of geometry to make it act as the actual light source inside of your render. All right, one of the last steps, and a very simple step, is the camera view. Now I'll skip ahead right here, there is a means of creating actual cameras, and there are benefits to creating a camera specifically in your model. But it does take a bit of work. You got to move the camera around in 3D space, you got to specify things, and for the only reason a camera actually justifies its existence is with this functionality right here, the depth of field. What this allows you to do is apply a depth of field plane right here, the front plane and the rear plane. You can go ahead and position those in the proper location. What that does is it's showing you, just like a real camera, it only has a limited depth of focus, that it can maintain focus on the subject. Everything before this first blue plane is going to become more and more out of focus, and everything after the last blue plane is going to become more and more out of focus. That's a really nice effect to add a very, very nice touch of realism to your model and render. If you're not doing that, here's a very quick and dirty way to do it that is, pretty much just as good and a lot easier to manage, and that is creating a named view. So I'll show you how to do it right here with this model. It's very quick, very easy. I'm going to close the preview once again. And to position this model just right, the number one thing, we're talking about making a photorealistic rendering. There is absolutely a high degree of unrealism going on with this render right now. The reason is because I don't have perspective mode turned on. Everything in real life has a vanishing point, so perspective applied to it. So we cannot expect, especially like something with a bunch of parallel edges, if they all truly remain parallel from an isometric view, that's going to have just a natural feeling that it's, to the viewer, that it's not a real photorealistic rendering, or it's not a real photo, which is what we want to trick our viewers into thinking. So you got to apply perspective. Now, how much perspective? If we're working with a camera, the closer we bring the camera to the subject matter, the more drastic the perspective is going to be. But here we just have a toggle button. Perspective's either on or it's off. And you can see how much better it looks when it's on. But we can control the severity of the perspective that's applied. The trick here is, in your command search in the top right hand corner of the screen, what you could do is you could type in, begin to type in modify. So actually just typing MOD is enough to return the result of modify perspective view. If I fire this little tool up, unfortunately it cannot be added as a button, so you always have to search for it or select it from the drop-down menu. I prefer just searching. You'll see that the default level of perspective is 3. I can crank this up and up and up. The larger the number is, the less perspective, or the less drastic the perspective is going to be. The smaller I make it, the more drastic it's going to be. And I could actually go all the way down to 0.1 if I wanted to. And you could see this is like a very, very drastic pretty cool look, as if we were held the camera directly up against or just a few inches away from the subject matter. I'm going to go ahead and crank this up maybe to 1 so that the angles aren't that drastic. But you can see how it gives it a much better look than having no perspective on whatsoever, and better than the initial value of 3 as well. So that's one step, is applying the perspective, adjusting the perspective value. The final step is creating a named view. I'm going to want to have the preview open for this. So I'm just going to tuck this up in the top corner since I don't have a lot of room to work with on this single monitor layout. But I'm paying attention to how well is my subject filling up the window that we see right there. So I'm going to go ahead and move it into a good looking location. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this button right here, Named View. If you don't have your interface customized like I do, what you might need to do is hit the space bar to bring up the View Orientation dialog box, this guy right here, and then you could click Name View right here as well. So by doing this, it brings up a little dialog box that allows me to give this specific view a name. So I'm just going to call it Render View. You can actually create as many views as you want, but I'm going to close this. I'm going to turn off perspective. I'm going to rotate this around to like the back view. And now if I wanted to, I could go ahead and select that view once again by bringing up the View Orientation dialog box, selecting Render View. It's going to turn on perspective to the exact value that I had set as far as how drastic it was being applied. And it even changes the camera orientation as well. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with, rather than creating a camera, just creating a named view. It's actually quite a bit easier interface-wise because you're just rotating the model around to where it looks good. So again, to review that process, apply perspective, modify the perspective value, and then create a named view. You can create as many as you want so you can come back to them at any time. Maybe you want to render your model from different angles. The final step, action. Once we've applied our appearances, and we're going to be wrapping up in just a minute or so. I know it's just about 3 o'clock right now. What we need to do is produce and output an image file that we're going to be able to use elsewhere. So I'm going to give you a few tips. We have some render settings that we can adjust. The number one tip, if you set your background to none, then you're definitely going to want to change your image format to Portable Network Graphics file. That's a PNG file, a PNG file extension. Much better than JPEG. It has a good amount of quality versus compression, so it keeps the file sizes small still, but it gives you that additional ability to have transparency. The preview render quality, you're always going to want to leave at good so that your preview updates very quickly. You want quick results for a preview. And for the final render, we'll see that we have multiple options. And really it's a question, how much time do you have? If you're letting this render overnight, your render can be that much better if you set it to a higher quality level. Some other cool things is this contour rendering that you can almost create like illustrative type renders, almost like a cartoony type render. It's called contour. You can adjust the thickness of the outline that's being applied to all the edges, the color of it, and you can even simplify the shading to be kind of like a cartoony style, so it fills it with solid colors rather than very intricate reflections and textures. But that's more of an advanced setting. But where do you find these settings that I'm talking about? The render settings are actually over here on the Display Manager. Again, we have our appearances, our decals, our scene settings, and lighting. Right over here on the right-hand side, we have PhotoView 360 options. These are our rendering settings where we could adjust the output image size. Right here what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to just be 1000 by 1000 because I'm going to create a final render on this, and I don't want it to take too long. The larger you have it, you can make that as large as you want, but it's going to take longer to render the entire process. Again, these are, when you're rendering, you could just start it at the end of the day and let your computer chug for the rest of the night. But I'm just creating a good size image, 1000 by 1000, for the sake of this demonstration. The portable network graphics file, again, my favorite file format because it has transparency. The final render quality you could set really dependent on how much time you have. I'm just setting it at good for now. And then the cartoon or contour rendering is pretty nifty as well. That's been updated and enhanced in 2014. So now that I got my settings right, what I'm going to do, actually let me turn off that contour rendering. I accidentally turned it on. Here you can see what it looks like. It highlights the edges with bold black lines because that's what I've got selected, and it's really cool. It'll fade out the edges as well, so it's not just like highlighting all the model edges, it's just outlining the best it can, and you can see all the model edges on the face mask that it's actually omitting. If I take a close look there, it does a nice job of outlining the edge and fading it to no edge where all those faces intersect. Pretty cool. But I'm going to turn that off for now. We're looking for a more realistic look than that. And very quickly I'll come back to my view that I've specified, the render view, so everything's perfectly centered. And what I'm going to do next is actually hit Final Render. I like how it looks. I'm going to go ahead and render it. What happens is this other window pops up. Not the preview window, but the final render window. So it's going to go through a few passes, bringing clarity to the entire image. And what you see dancing around on the screen right now are 8 little boxes. Those are representing my 8 cores of processors on my computer. So the more processors you have, actually the faster you can render. There's also been an enhancement over the past couple of years that allow you to set up network farms of, or a render farm basically, which means you can network computers together and have them all work together to render different portions of a model. I want to point out a few things here. Sometimes you might have selected a color and you didn't get it just right. If you ever want to change the entire hue of an entire image, what you can do is drag this little dial back and forth, and you can see how those colors change pretty drastically. I don't think you'd want to get that drastic with color changes, but if I just want to make it a little bit more rich of an orange color, I could accomplish that just by dragging right here. These are post-processing capabilities that we have right here built into the software that normally you'd need something like Photoshop to be able to apply. Another place that I like to pay attention to are these little sliders right here. These are what are called your levels. If you drag this white little dial down, what it's going to do is make all of the highlights on your model brighter and brighter and brighter. So what you want to do is you don't want to overdo it, but you might want your highlights to be a little bit brighter, and you could just go ahead and drag that down till you're content. What if I want my shadows to be darker? I could actually drag this black handle or little slider upwards. So if I drag it all the way up, it's going to turn my model dark pretty quickly, but we don't want to overdo it. I just want a little bit more shadow inside of the helmet, so I'm just going to tweak that up a little bit. And it gives us really nice contrast on our final render as well. Whenever I'm done, all I have to do is hit this button right here, Save Image. I'll pick a file location. I'll call this helmet and hit Save. And what you'll see, as soon as it's done saving that, which it is, I'll go ahead and open this up, and you'll see the final render right here. What you see is black and white checkboxes or checkers all in the background, that's representative of, that's just telling me that the background is transparent. So again, if I drag this into a presentation, I'd be able to see the background color through the face mask and all around it, which is always a really nice effect, especially for marketing, maybe on a website or a brochure. Okay, so that's pretty much all I had for today. Just one final slide. Here's a closer look at the settings that I like to change. Another thing that they give you an option to tweak a little bit is the saturation. If you crank it down all the way to 0, that's how you can make a black and white image very quickly out of a colored render. 0% saturation file, or a percentage, I should say. File management, I already mentioned this. You want to store these things on a drive, probably a network drive if you're sharing with multiple SolidWorks users, but you'll want to centralize those files one way or another. The other thing too is there's a nice option on the document properties. So this is per file property that allows you to control the model display and store your appearances, decals, scenes, and all that information into the file as it's saved. So this is going to make your part file or assembly file larger because it's embedding that data, but it makes it a lot easier to share. So if you wanted to email your file to someone else, automatically they'll receive all of your additional appearance information rather than linking to that network, that shared centralized network drive that we just talked about before. All right, guys, so that's it. Lights, camera, action. Those are the steps to go ahead and create a nice rendering inside of PhotoView pretty quickly without getting into all the details that PhotoView 360 is capable of. If you have any questions, go ahead and type it into the questions dialog box, and I'll try to review it in these last few minutes. Otherwise, feel free to jot down my email or my phone number and contact me at another time. Here's a really good question that someone asked. They said, is there an easy way to remove all face or body appearance overrides at once in a part file if you want to go back and to just the part level appearance? There's a few different ways that I would tackle that. So let me come back over to SolidWorks. And again, if anyone wants to, feel free to log off now. We're already past the 3 o'clock mark. And I'll have to log off in 5 minutes since I have another meeting right after this. But again, don't hesitate to send more questions to me with that contact info. Here, what I would do to remove appearances at the part level, I just want to point out, if you right-click on the part itself, you're going to see a little beach ball icon pop-up menu. And this is pretty nice. You can remove all part appearances. This will remove the part appearance as well, but all the appearances applied to the faces, all the appearances applied to all the bodies, and so on. This is your one-click button to remove all the appearances and start completely fresh. But if you wanted to keep the part level appearances, then what you could do is you can come to the Display Manager tab, click on the beach ball icon for the appearances, and then there's a sort order. What I would do is I would do it by hierarchy. So now what you could do is you could see I've applied a bunch of appearances to bodies and just one to the part. So I could select all of these and then just go ahead and remove those appearances while I'm keeping the appearance applied to my part. So that should do the trick for you. Another question was asked, and this is a good one. I'd have to think about this a little bit. If you applied all your appearances and then created a new configuration. So what I could do is I could simulate this right now. I could right click up here and add a new configuration. I'll just call this test. What is apparently going to happen is that this new configuration is not going to have the appearances copied over. But check out this warning. The appearance for this material is different than the existing appearance. Would you like to link display states to configurations to show the material's appearance in each configuration? So what you can do is, I'm just going to hit no here for the sake of the argument. And what you'll see by hitting no, I have unlinked display states to configurations, meaning that the display of this first configuration can be the exactly the same display as a second configuration. If I had display states linked to the configuration, then what I would have had upon the new configuration is it would have just started off fresh. But as you can see here, what I'm going to do, if you don't know about display states, they're very similar to configurations. They're just controlling, rather than physical properties, sizes, and things like that, they're controlling appearance properties. So if I right-click this, or slow double-click to rename it, I'm going to call this browns, or I'll just call it orange. What I can do with that unlinked, I'm going to delete these other two display states. I have the orange and I have display state 2. I'm actually going to rename display state 2 to red. And I'm going to come over to the appearance tab, select on a plastic for the heck of it, and drag and drop this onto the body. Now what I have are two different display states. Without even having to switch a configuration, I can switch between those two. And then I could switch a configuration to my test configuration and still switch between the two display states. If I wanted to link display states to configurations, then what I'd have to have is the orange only available for the default configuration, and as soon as I change to the test configuration, it would be using the red. By unchecking that option, I can use either display state on either configuration. So that might be what you're looking for. Just uncheck that link display states configuration, and then you can activate your first configuration's display state on your second configuration. All right, any more questions? I don't see any more typed in. One more question just rolled in. Can completely new scenes be created as models in SolidWorks? That's a very good question. Unfortunately, that's not a capability. So if you have, like, say, modeled an entire room and you wanted to convert that to a scene, that's not currently a capability. The scene files are actually an HDR image that is a spherical image. There are forums online that describe how to create these files. But even better than that, something I want to point out is if you are a paid subscription customer, you can log into customerportal.solidworks.com, register your SolidWorks serial number, and what will be unlocked for you, besides a bunch of other really cool things with the SolidWorks community, enhancement request forms and things like that. One of the things that you'll be able to get if you have SolidWorks Professional or higher is an access to Luxologies, who is actually the creator of a product called Modo, who we actually pretty much adopted the same rendering engine. That's the back end of PhotoView 360. It actually was developed initially by Luxology. Luxology has shared a great portion of their appearances and their scenes as well. So what you can do is, in my custom appearances, I actually have Luxology appearances. There's all kinds of crazy ones. You know, even fire. You could turn just a regular spherical shape into what seems to be a bunch of flames. So there's very, very cool scenes. You know, like there's this one that applies, has bubbles just popping up all over the place. You'll see all kinds of crazy looking things, fur, hair, you name it, and you can go ahead and download that. So check out the scenes as well that might be available on there. All right, if there's no more questions, I gotta get going. Again, you have my contact info. I'll put that on the screen one more time. Thanks for attending. I hope it was useful, and take care. Have a good day.